The Spontaneity Shop presents the Guilty Feminist Waterstone's Book Club with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guests, Jess Robinson and Max Olesker. Our first guest today is a multi-award-winning comedian, a contributing editor at Esquire, and was once Britain's youngest professional wrestler. He is one half of globally acclaimed comedy double act Max and Ivan, and his first book, Making the Cut, is out now. Please welcome to the stage, Max Olesker. Whichever takes your fancy. Clearly, there's no plasmon, because it's very rough and ready tonight. But that kind of sometimes feels very live and London-y, doesn't it? Feels quite underground, although we are 4 floors up. 5 floors up, but, you know, meant psychologically underground. We are also joined by a multiple award-winning actor, impressionist, singer, comedian, and voice artist who has many times toured with the Guilty Feminist, doing absolutely brilliant and delightful songs, sometimes parodies, sometimes impersonations, sometimes very poignant and touching things, including a brilliant song that she did about her grandmother before she wrote this book on the same theme. It's called Life is Rosy, Grandma, Me and Our Diaries at 23. Please welcome to the stage the incredible Jess Robinson! This way. Well done and welcome. So let me say...
That is a nice way to start. Well done and welcome.
Well, it's a death trap coming up on this on this in high heels, Jess, and you've really smashed it so far.
Oh, we've peaked.
Yeah.
That's it now.
Let me say, it is truly wonderful to be interviewing 2 of my dear friends who I hold much affection for. And you have written books on similar themes, interweaving themes, 2 very different books on a similar theme. And I am delighted to say that they are both absolutely sensational. They are moving, they made me laugh, they made me cry. And I haven't had to lie to either of you about how great your books are, which is not always the case.
Thank you so much.
I genuinely do think that I can heartily recommend these books to everyone, nay, give them as presents, because I don't think anybody could not like these books.
Well, I actually ran the quote, I didn't have to lie about liking it, Deborah Frances-White. It's on the back. It's on the back of...
You say that to all the writers.
I absolutely don't. I say things like, extraordinary. You know, that's a great quote for a book. But it could be extraordinarily bad. We don't know. But both of your books I found so beautifully written and so heartfelt. I feel like you're both real artists because you really share. You're not managing your image, or it's not cosmetic. It feels very raw, and I think it's very, very brave, that the way that you have shared at this level. Could you give us a little praise each of your books? Max, can you tell everyone what your book is about?
Yeah, absolutely. It is, and I suppose kind of when I start talking about mine, it'll somewhat give away the theme of Jess's, given that you've implied there is a connection. So yeah, it's a Jewish memoir, as is Jess's, but I'll speak only about mine. It's called Making the Cut, an unorthodox love story, and the headlines are that I met a woman in a bar in Edinburgh at 3 a.m. We fell in love. And then after about 6 months of us seeing one another, I came to realize that it would be impossible for us to be together unless I were to undergo the Orthodox Jewish conversion process, which is known to be one of the most challenging religious conversions in the world. And it was a double blow, not just because that was incredibly difficult, but also because up until that moment, I'd felt that I was Jewish. I'd been raised with a Jewish identity. I'd had a bar mitzvah and all sorts of things, but it turned out that my flavor of Judaism didn't quite mesh with Eliana's. And and that's the name of my partner. And the book is the story of our 3-year attempt to navigate this Orthodox Jewish conversion process in order to be with one another.
And an absolutely extraordinary journey and a brilliant book. Jess, tell us about your book.
So my book is about my grandma Rosie, who she was German and Jewish, and in 1938, she was living and working in an orphanage in Esslingen in Germany, where she was looking after the children and playing her guitar to them. And she was sort of like a German Jewish Maria von Trapp. But because she had a Polish passport, even though she was born and lived in Germany and didn't even speak Polish, because her parents were Polish. There is a bit of the Holocaust that nobody ever talks about called the Pollen Action. And that's when, it was sort of Hitler's dress rehearsal for the Holocaust, when he got all of the Polish Jews out of Germany, and my grandma at the age of 23 was one of them. And so I've got all of her diaries from this time when she was 23 years old. And what I've done is I have run them in parallel with my diaries from when I was 23. And it all started because I wanted to get a German passport after Brexit. And I had to go back through all of her papers and documents to prove the ancestry. And that's when I discovered her diaries and delved into my heritage.
And it is a really, really, it's poignant to read her diaries. You originally pitched it to me as a cross between Anne Frank's diary and Bridget Jones' diary.
That's what I said to HarperCollins. Anne Frank meets Bridget Jones. Yeah,
and it does work. At the time, I thought, "Oh, Jess.
Oh, Jess, what are you not?
Are you sure?" I genuinely thought, "Are you sure?" And I found it so compelling. Like, actually, in some ways, how similar.
Yes.
That you are, because you're both mooning over boys and wondering if you'll ever meet anybody, and, you know, all of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And, you know, someone very close to me in my chosen family, he's lived in refugee camps as a refugee, and he said, you'd be amazed how much of refugee camp angst is, why didn't they text me back? And getting a new crush and then thinking, well, they said that they were going to be volunteering today and they're not here, and they haven't texted me, and they've kind of left me on red, and this is really weird. And, you know, and how much that angst, you know, continues, that life goes on.
Yes.
And so how much of her diaries are about pride in her work.
Yes.
At the times when she's able to work, even though she's not being paid. Mm-hmm. And about pride in herself, her determination.
Yeah.
And about boys she likes.
Honestly, I was very surprised and heartened as well to read that while her world was crumbling and she was in this refugee camp. She didn't know whether her family was alive or anything. She was still worrying about boys. But I think that was because she needed to keep some thread of normality when everything else was so shaky around her. And of course, you know, humans want to feel safe, and feeling
Connection.
safe is, feeling loved, isn't it?
And you can't every moment of every day go, oh my God, this is terrible things happening to me. Your day is made up of lots of small moments, and if you find a connection with someone in a hopeless place, then you do hold on to that. And
Absolutely.
And also, she's 23.
This is terrible. My world's, he's hot.
Yeah,
Like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Your book also really has a big romantic heart to it, because you are doing something for somebody you love, so that the two of you can be together. It's I think that and sort of marrying for a green card is, but marrying because you want to be with somebody, because you can't be in the same country. You know, I don't mean for a green card, but I mean marrying somebody because otherwise you will lose them to this because of state borders. They're possibly the last two big romantic reasons to marry.
Sure.
Because most people now just shack up for ages, and then by the time they think, oh, well, if we want to have kids, maybe we should have the party. It'd be nice to have the white dress and have our friends, and we've already got a toaster, don't worry, just pop something in for the honeymoon. Like we're in that sort of place, and I think your story is so romantic, and it had some of the romantic reflections of moments from your grandmother as well. It's really, really interesting.
Absolutely. Firstly, Rosie, like the grandmother, she writes with such like chic, elegant kind of prose in the diary.
And me?
Topped only by Jess Robinson's deathless sentence making. No, it's gorgeous. It's just different tones. Hers is very kind of I'd say yours is wonderfully excitable and full of heart, and you wear your emotions on your sleeve. And she's so kind of sort of elegant and placid, but then she'll be like, well, I'm seeing 6 boys simultaneously at the moment. And that's quite all right, and I shall choose one of them at a certain time.
Yeah. Well, she says, I'm carrying on. I mean, these have been translated into English, but, she'll say, she'll talk about a boy for ages, then she'll say, but I'm also carrying on with Stefan.
Yeah.
Yes.
She'll say...
And there's that guy as well.
They hate each other, and that's actually lucky because they don't speak and they don't know. And you're just like...
Yeah.
And I think at one point you say, Grandma was a player.
Yeah, she was an absolute player. She was fabulous.
Incredible work.
She really was. I'd actually, before I dive into quoting things from your books, it would be great for the audience if they could hear a little bit of each to get some context. Who would like to go first?
You go first.
Certainly. Right. I'm going to read the entire book. I'm going to read the opening chapter, which is also the shortest chapter. Beginnings and endings. The Edinburgh Fringe, 2 a.m. She has red lipstick and clear blue almond eyes which dance with mischief, and a sheer confidence that I've never encountered before. Uniquely, it doesn't seem fueled by either insecurity or entitlement, by trying to achieve anything or to prove anything. She just seems to exist more vividly than other people. Your show was really funny. Oh, thank you so much. Would you like a drink? Ivan and I have just bought a bottle of wine. Would you like a glass? Somewhere across the bar, Ivan Gonzalez, my comedy partner, turns and gives a cheerful, vague wave in the direction of whoever said his name. Nah, she says. I'm going out. Shots? She orders us both Jaeger bombs. Undrinkable, saccharine, poisonous things. Much later, we all realize that neither of us actually liked them in the first place, though our friends who were with us at the bar assure us that evening, we both drank them slowly, savouring each syrupy monstrosity as though it were a delicately aged old-fashioned. Cheers. It's nice to meet you. Nestled between a group of loud French-Canadian circus performers and some extremely earnest student puppeteers, we are pushed together in the crush of the bar as she explains that, technically, we've met before. A previous summer, when working at the Fringe, she was assigned to run the front of house at a chaotic show in which comedians become professional wrestlers, a show I produced and a product of my misspent youth as a teenage grappler. And so, the first time we met, she was taking tickets and I was somersaulting off a ladder onto some comedians. Tale as old as time. Our double act show has quite a different energy to the wrestling. I hope that was okay. I mean, I demanded a full refund because you weren't wearing your lightning bolt shorts, but otherwise very few complaints. She is sharp and whimsical and surprising and effervescent and self-possessed and spectacular. Her name is Eliana. And I like the Jewish jokes, she says. Oh, it's okay, I say. I'm allowed to make them. Her eyes light up. And so it all begins, because I'm Jewish. 1 year later, London, 3 p.m. We have fallen deep into the ravine of togetherness. We have moved in together, organized surprise birthday parties for one another, given one another handmade cards, become part of one another's friendship groups, nursed one another through illnesses, argued furiously, and reconciled passionately. We've fallen inescapably in love. My suitcase is packed and waiting by the front door. There are more of my possessions piled on top. An unruly, unwieldy overspill of things. Clothes, books, stationery, crammed hastily into spare rucksacks, canvas totes, and, eventually, overstuffed plastic shopping bags. Yet more things on the floor. My coffee machine, my stupid folding bike that I love. My half of our life together. We cook each other a sad beige dinner of steak and mushrooms, and we sit in silence and eat. My face is grey. Tears streak Eliana's cheeks. Eventually, a cab arrives, an XL to account for, all of the stuff. I'm so sorry, says Eliana. So am I respond. We have broken up because I'm not Jewish.
I do think that's a really beautiful piece of writing, and it creates a great promise that opens up for the rest of the book Jess, can you read a little bit of
I
yours?
don't know if I can now. That was beautiful, and mine's got a really silly word in it. Okay. Diary of Rosie Schul, age 23, Wednesday, 30th of November, 1938. In the internment camp, my day really starts when I arrive at the stadium. The children always greet me with enthusiasm. They run to me shouting, "Rosie is here! Rosie is here!" It spurs me on to give them lots of love, both the 11 and 12-year-olds, and the little ones too. At midday, the children queue up for their second breakfast, and as there are no chairs, they have to eat standing in a row. Then I visit those children who are ill, and I try to make them laugh and feel relaxed. The highlight of my day is always story time. In fact, as soon as I arrive, there are shouts of, "We want a story today!" So I climb up one of the wall ladders and hold on to the rungs while they sit below me on their beds. Because I have no books here, I make up funny and interesting stories. At the beginning of them, I don't even know how they will end myself. But oh, how I love the sight of the children's eager little faces, their wide eyes so expectant for more twists and turns in the tale. Sometimes I get ideas from them by asking, "Well, what do you think happens next?" And when I leave, there are always more shouts of, "Another story tomorrow, please." I have always felt different from Mum and Grandma. They're so strong. I'm a muddle of sensitivities, always worrying about what people will think. It's only now, at 38, though I maintain when acting I can play 18 and I must play 18, that I no longer choose to hang out with the people I don't actually like just to avoid being alone. I'm only beginning to discover the sort of funny, emotionally intelligent women who understand me, who don't mind if I'm too much or laugh too loudly, or the fact that whenever I compliment a stranger, for some reason I get a lump in my throat and want to cry. Why is that? Why is that? Getting choked up when you say to someone, "Oh, your hat looks beautiful. Why does that make me emotional? Answer me!" I keep reading about women stepping into their power. I don't think I can do that until I find my voice and have the confidence to use it unapologetically. Will I ever have the courage to simply say, "No, I'm not coming to your party because I'd rather stay in and watch Real Housewives of Beverly Hills," instead of making up a far-fetched excuse? And if you know me and I've flaked on your party, those excuses weren't for your event. I really was tied up. Tied up by a burglar in my own house. The only place where I'm totally honest, where I have always been totally honest, is my diary. In fact, I'm now starting to wonder what I might learn if I look back at my own diaries. How will a young Jess measure up to Rosie at the same age on the same-ish date? This is probably a suicide mission, which will result in more self-loathing. But what if I find glimpses of that same strength and where it might have disappeared to? Maybe I can pinpoint a moment and put it right. What if, as I uncover Grandma's experiences and look back at my own, I can learn to live on my own terms, just as Grandma did? Okay, here we go. I'm going to do it. Oh, God, I feel like a little bit like I'm showing you my bumhole and asking for approval. Diary of Jess Robinson, age 23, Friday, 30th of November, 2006. Rachel and I have just been drinking wine and we think it would be a really good idea to run a sex phone line. You can just sit there in your PJs and your phone's rerouted and the calls come in and you just talk to pervs while you're watching something on telly or having a cuppa. We saw it on a documentary. There was an old lady saying, oh yeah, while she was putting her laundry in the washing machine and eating biscuits in her slippers. P.S. I've got an audition for Cinderella tomorrow at 5 p.m. I have to sing an up-tempo and a ballad. So I'm going to sing Moment Like This by Leona Lewis. Unbelievable. And Is This the Way to Amarillo by Peter Kay. I'll just stand and look into the middle distance for Leona. Oh, I'm such a wanker. But I think I could sing Amarillo sort of posh like a princess, and I'll imagine I'm in the woods and I'm asking the animals the way to Amarillo. I hate myself.
So, can I ask you, I mean...
Sorry, I fluffed a bit there.
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. It was wonderful. So can I ask you both...
To sing a ballad in an up-tempo.
Yeah, what do you want to do?
I'm going to do Somewhere from West Side Story.
Oh, that's a nice one.
It's a bit classy, right?
Lovely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful.
Leona Lewis will be very upset. Can I ask, how did you come to write these books? What was the moment where you thought, this should be a book and I need to write this? Because these books are so personal, and I'm sure you'll both go on to write other books, but I feel like you're never going to give birth to anything as personal and 360 out of the soul as these books, in a way, because they're about such huge things, huge pieces of your own identities. Jess, what was the point where you thought, first of all, you say that it was after 2016 you wanted a German passport, and you thought also you should be able to have one.
Yes.
Because your grandmother was forced to leave Germany.
Yeah.
And that was when you started showing interest in your grandmother's old letters and diaries, or did you not know they were there before?
I always knew my grandma's story, and I always knew that she had written diaries because my auntie Stephanie had sat with her and translated a few pages for posterity, and a few of these A4 pages were given to close friends and family. But it was actually when my lovely agent Sophie, who's more like a big sister to me, met my grandma when we were filming Britain's Got Talent, and the producers wanted to film grandma and get her to say to the camera, I'm very proud of Jessie. Although actually, whenever they said action, she'd go, I'm proud of all my grandchildren. She was amazing. Every time. No, can you just say you're really proud of Jess? Yes, of course. Action.
Can I just say, your grandma and my mum would have been best friends.
Yeah. Oh, I love how many similarities there are in our books. So my agent Sophie fell in love with grandma and her story and just the remarkable sort of formidable woman she was. And from that moment, she said, we've got to try and tell your grandma's story. So I put like a little excerpt in the show, and I did a little bit about her on the Guilty Feminist, and I pitched it as a sitcom and a documentary, and nobody was biting. And then during lockdown, that's when I decided to get a passport for all the family, which was harder than it sounds. But Sophie said, do you want to just, write a book proposal as well? So I went, yeah, all right. I didn't know what I was doing, but I did my best GCSE English, and HarperCollins got back to us within about a month, which was bonkers, and I still can't really believe it, to be honest.
Wow. So you were thinking, because it would make a great documentary, going back,
so.
and I hope you do get a documentary off the back of it. But it was just sort of, you needed to get it out in some way, shape or form,
yes.
whether it be a drama or a doc or something.
Yeah.
And this is the form it came out in, basically. They were the publishers were the people to buy it, and you
yes.
thought, right, so it can be a book.
Yes.
Was it when you first went back and started reading? When did you first know there were diaries, and when did you first read the diaries?
I think I first knew there were diaries when I was about 25 or 26, after I'd written the actual diaries that are in the book. My diaries, I mean. Then I went back and looked at all of the other diaries once I'd got the book deal, actually. So if they had been rubbish, that would have been really bad, wouldn't it? But they were all written in German and all in this tricky handwriting called Suttelenschrift, which was only used in German schools for a really something like a 10-year period of time. So there aren't that many people that can read it. But luckily, my mum has a great mate who translated the diaries, and mum wrote them all out in pencil on A4 pages and then sent me the pages through the post. It was all very sort of analogue and very lovely.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah.
And it's an absolute goldmine of things in there, absolutely glorious stuff. Was it like, because you knew your grandmother very, very well, but was it a strange experience connecting with her as a 23-year-old?
Yeah.
When you were a 38-year-old?
Yes. I knew her as a very cuddly to me and kind grandma, and I knew that she also had a very strict side and that she could be a bit spiky to my mum. But I just knew her as an old lady. To re-meet her when she's a 23-year-old and so vulnerable and so stoic and so sort of carries herself with such grace, actually, it was like meeting a new person and trying to sort of marry them together it was both, completely easy and totally jarring as well. It was very interesting.
Did it awaken in you? I mean, some of this is in the book, but did it awaken in you a fire for your own heritage, or do you think parts of you that you were just cracking on with your life and trying to make it in show business, and you hadn't really considered the heritage of someone who escaped the Holocaust?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel more connected and more moved by my heritage and more tender about it now, and also more scared to, have Jewish heritage than ever, because it's a very weird and shaky time to come out and do a book about being Jewish when there's so much horror going on in the world and echoes of awful things. So that felt quite exposing. And also to look back at my own diaries and realise that while I was writing, a lot of my opinions and the way that I thought about myself had sort of frozen at that age, and I hadn't moved on or moved forward or hadn't learned to speak up for myself and use my voice, and was still being the good girl and grateful girl that I thought that, you have to be to get along. And I'm not her anymore. I think writing has changed me, and it's a muscle I'm still learning to flex, to speak up for myself and say, hey, no, when that's wrong. But yeah. But
it's allowed you to distance yourself from those ways of thinking and ways of being and actions, and say, hold on a minute, if I'm not liking what I'm reading as a 23-year-old in my condemning of myself or my feelings about myself or my body or any of those things, if I feel protective for that 23-year-old, when I replicate these things now, should I not be protective of myself now? And that's a really interesting thing. Yeah. That as a writer, you have then become a bolder, more mature person.
I think it's important now that I become the woman that I should have been for her.
Interesting. What about you, Max? How did this writing of this book have interplay with your younger self, your heritage?
Well, the entire book is a sort of absolutely enormous identity crisis playing out over the course of the entire thing. And it ended up in book form because that felt like the only plausible way of kind of communicating everything that happened in a way that felt in any way representative of what happened. As I've sort of, the shows that I've made and the things that I've done have become increasingly kind of autobiographical as the years have gone by. And it's no spoiler alert, it doesn't give too much away to say that the conversion process did not go as planned. There were about 7 or 8 moments where the entire thing very nearly imploded, and it was such a extraordinary experience or series of experiences that I knew that by the end I would need it was sort of sat on the top of my kind of psyche, and I knew that I would need to respond to it or reflect on it in some kind of way. And having lots of very considerate and compassionate and kind friends who would sit there over long lunches or interminable nights with 1 to 12 bottles of wine. It's just such a densely kind of packed, strange thing. And also it's a story that if you have a Jewish background, you can explain lots of it slightly quicker because there's shared shorthand and terminology. But if you don't come from that world, then lots of it's totally mind-boggling. There's all sorts of concepts that you need to introduce. And I wanted to be able to tell a story that was accessible to the world, not an unbelievably niche handbook from how to convert from one type of Judaism to another in order to marry someone you love, even though you're not allowed to convert for that reason. And suddenly we're getting into the specifics of all of it. So yes, I found myself re-examining and re-engaging with my Jewish identity and my kind of preconceptions and also my insecurities about it in ways which I found very reflective of Jess's book as well. We both kind of grew up outside of London, both grew up as like, you know, I grew up in Portsmouth. I was like the most Jewish kid in my school.
And I was in a little village in Hertfordshire called Aldbury, where my mum played the organ in the village church. So
and then you circuitously find yourself in London, where you know, by some distance, one of the, you know, least Jewish people in the northwest London neighborhood. But I didn't, in my particular case, I didn't realize until I met Eliana, and then even then I lived for a few months in willful deniability that you know, that although I knew I was never particularly good at being Jewish, I didn't know that I was considered non-Jewish by a whole quadrant of the Jewish community. And even though that hadn't been at the forefront of my identity, it was still part of who I was or who I perceived myself to be. So it was
that was because your mum is not Jewish through heritage, right?
Correct. So my mum converted. My father was he was never religious or observant. He was halachically Jewish would be the term. He had two Orthodox Jewish parents. My mum converted to Judaism when I was about to do my bar mitzvah, something she'd always knew that she would do at some point. She wanted to be part of our family's Jewish journey and support that. But she converted via the Reform movement, and that's partly because it sort of naturally aligned with her values as a progressive, like feminist, artist, bohemian. It kind of seemed to mesh with her sensibilities. But it was actually also, ironically, because she wanted her three sons to have as engaged and active a relationship with Judaism as she could. And in Portsmouth, the Orthodox shul, which ironically was about a 3-minute walk from my house, but the median age of the attendees is 206. And she just felt that if you're taking three boys there to see the slightly faded sclerotic minion, the quorum of men trying to muster up a gathering for a weekend service, there's little to connect to. So she took what was actually a kind of, you know, a more labour-intensive route, because it involved schlepping out to various places around Hampshire, this Reform community which was itinerant and roving around and was never in the same place. But it meant that we had kids our age. There were other Jewish. It gave us a semblance of a very patchwork kind of diaspora of a diaspora. But we kind of, you know, I got to go to Josh's bar mitzvah and Layla's bat mitzvah, and we got to kind of, you know, go to a cheder school, which I sort of resented but kind of enjoyed. And, you know, it meant that there was some sort of a framework. And although it led to a catastrophic series of theological, bureaucratic kind of rabbit holes, it did mean that there was this sense of identity, and it was never imposed upon us. I was never even told I had to have a bar mitzvah, but I think my parents just wanted to show us, you know, these are the festivals. This is what the candles that your grandfather gave us mean. This is your heritage. This is part of who you are. You can embrace it. You can choose to participate or not as you choose.
That part of it where your father was very a great student of like Hebrew stories and Jewish
Yiddish
songs
folklore,
and
klezmer
Yiddish
music.
And so you had a relationship with a father who really embraced all of the culture around it.
Oh, he was the most Jewish man ever, and like looked exactly like a rabbi. Completely irreligious, but gorgeous long beard and a strong Jewish schnoz, and like an endless array of klezmer songs and shtick and ridiculous stories.
So you, of course, and your father is not Jewish, is that right,
No,
Jess?
so my dad wasn't Jewish.
So you're kind of as Jewish as each other because you're both...
Well, it depends who you speak. Very interesting.
That's the thing.
As a machlokas, you want to know.
Yeah. In some circles, I would have been considered more Jewish than Max.
Absolutely.
Because my mum is Jewish, even though my dad isn't Jewish. And even though he had this amazing Jewish upbringing I didn't have any of that. I didn't know the festivals.
And your mother played the organ at the church.
At the church.
But
she was the only pianist in the village.
Did you have a bat mitzvah?
No.
So you didn't have any of that?
I didn't have any of it.
And you're 50% genetically, if we can say that, is that correct? 50% genetically Jewish.
Sure.
Jewish
you're 50% genetically Jewish.
Yeah.
And both of you have family who were in the Holocaust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yet...
I actually wonder whether our my great-grandparents were from a town near yours.
Near Olesker
Yeah.
in Galicia.
Yeah, we need to look.
We'll check that out.
Yeah.
And your wife Eliana's her family is from a nearby village as yet. Well,
Yeah,
yes.
but we're proud to say that we're not related by blood.
But we might be.
We might be. That would be a delight. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah.
And there's so you are as Jewish as each other, but as you say, not really, because it has to come down through
Indeed.
the mother's line. So
Oddly,
you're not halakhically Jewish.
or interestingly, or maybe not. But one of the few. Any Orthodox community would judge that you were de facto. Had I not done the Orthodox conversion, that you were more Jewish than I. Weirdly, one of the only instances where that might be flipped is Reform, which is now known as Progressive Judaism, who are, in general,
Have they changed the name because of the political party?
Well, I don't think that helped. I think they waved it through quite quickly.
It's like, where we go?
Yeah.
They changed the name to UKIP Judaism.
Yes, UKIPA Judaism, as I
that's
think
so
what
much
it's called.
better. God damn it.
Come on, they're having a good
I
time.
can't believe I missed that. I'm so annoyed.
Hey.
I'll never get over it.
But there is a tradition in the progressive side, which is basically if you are not raised with a Jewish tradition, then they don't kind of say you are de facto Jewish. You would need to kind of choose to embrace it.
It is the hardest religion to be embraced by, isn't it?
Tell me about it, mate. Tell me about it.
There's actually a very poignant part in your book where you say that you talk about anti-Semitism, and you talk about about how you would definitely be Jewish enough to have been killed in the Holocaust.
I say that too.
But you say that in fact you realise, and the way other people relate to you, and so on and so on, and when you start practicing Orthodoxy, but you say if I've got this wrong, please correct me, but I think you say the only people in the world who don't see me as Jewish is a small collection of Jewish people.
Yeah, I was quite surprised at how painful I found it to be considered not Jewish. And I think part of that is because I'd always thought of it as a sort of a sliding scale and a spectrum. I've got an Orthodox uncle, with in Jerusalem with like 30 kids and a big black beard. And like I kind of knew that was on one side, and I knew that we were, driving to synagogue on a Saturday, and our rabbi was a lesbian. And there's, but I didn't know there was this kind of this halakhic gulf for this kind of definitional definition. And I'm sure part of the reason that it was so painful was because I happened to discover it via falling in love with a woman who was then suddenly, on the other side of a canyon or behind an invisible pane of glass or whatever, imagery you want to use.
If you were writing a movie, it's a great story because you come together. She thinks you're Jewish, you think you're Jewish, and then when it comes to looking at a more serious future, this issue comes up. And I think it's particularly poignant because when you're born, you say that the nurse in Portsmouth asks what your name's going to be, and your mother says, Max
Jacob Henry Olesker.
And the nurse says, "Ooh, it sounds a bit Jewish." And she says, "Well, he is Jewish," and she gives you back to your mother and goes like that. And your mother says, at that point, she thinks, "Oh, this is going to be your whole life. This is going to be around you, so I need to be with you on that journey. I can't let you have that alone, so I'm going to be Jewish with you." And that's such a beautiful kind of poignant thing.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until I was writing them. I thought she'd possibly just decided to. She didn't, she was very welcome in the progressive community that we were part of. I'm not sure there was any element of that she couldn't really participate in. She was definitely the most organized one, so she was kind of running it all anyway. But I thought she just kind of I thought she did her conversion because I was doing my bar mitzvah and it felt like the time. But she said that that might have been what kind of prompted her to finally get round to it. But she said from the start, this was something that she knew she'd do, and she would. And from this moment when I was handed back with a look of disgust, she knew that even if I hadn't had the slightest interest in any element of Jewish identity, it's not something you can completely sort of absolve yourself of, or remove yourself from, and not, which is not to say that you should let the fascists choose what your identity is or isn't, and they shouldn't be the ones who get to to do the sorting. But it certainly was oddly painful that that growing up, I thought I was Jewish, my parents thought I was Jewish, my rabbi at my bar mitzvah seemed to think I was Jewish, the kid who headbutted me in the playground thought I was Jewish. It just happens to be that the Jewish girl who I've fallen for, and she doesn't not think I'm Jewish, but it's
just
but
not
she can't.
Jewish enough. Do you feel more Jewish now that you've converted to Orthodoxy?
That's a good question. I mean, without a shadow, as indignant as I felt at various times about my identity or the fact that I wanted to be accepted, I certainly didn't think I knew, what I was doing in terms of actually being a practicing Jew. I'd learned to read Hebrew when I was a teenager. When I did my father taught me how to read Hebrew for my bar mitzvah. But I mean, I wasn't really keeping it up. So it was.
You weren't doing your Duolingo.
Hey, nice. I was not. No. But it was there. I mean,
I must have just mispronounced it. I've only just got the joke.
I thought you were just being really cool about it. You were just
No, I meant Duolingo, but I think I just said it in a way, and
You
I went,
said it
"Why
really
is everyone
beautifully.
everyone went, "Way!" And it took me a while. I was like, "What's the joke?" And then I went, "Oh, I get it."
Yeah.
I thought you'd been storing
I know that I
for
can make
ages.
that joke, so I'm really glad I've clarified. I think that's more a joke for you. I think UKIP actually I could have made, and I really feel a missed opportunity. But anything with the duo in it, I'm like, no, I'll leave that. You have some really extraordinary. There's an extraordinary moment of anti-Semitism that you react to because it's 2006 and you're very young by thinking, oh, maybe I need to change in show business.
Yes. So
Can you tell us about that?
That audition that I read about in my book, I went for it for Cinderella, and at the end of this audition, the director said, have you got any questions? And I said, when would I expect to hear? And he said, well, I can tell you now, you've got a lovely voice, Jessica, but I'm afraid you're just you look a bit too Jewish. And
It's just not long ago. No, it's just
it's not that long
2006.
ago. And I
it's just...
said, because this is what you were taught, and I didn't realise it, okay, thank you so much for having me. And then I went out, and then I had to go back in to get my music, and then I went out again. And that was it. And then I was so not getting on very well with my love life and the regular actors that I was sort of trying to go out with. I decided to see if I could join a Jewish dating agency. But they said the fact that my dad wasn't Jewish and I couldn't speak Hebrew and didn't have a bat mitzvah or anything, I wasn't Jewish enough for that.
And it's this, both of you have this tension in your books and in your lives of too Jewish, not Jewish enough.
Yeah.
But they'd still want to kill us, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Exactly. And
this is why we publish at the same time. This is the Barbenheimer of Jewish identity crisis familial memoirs with love at their heart. That's what people are saying.
Yeah. But interestingly, it's your agent at the time says, when you tell her, they said, I look too Jewish, your agent at the time said, maybe dye your hair blonde.
Yeah.
And then
That's the kind of support you need.
And you're...
I have been meaning to say, babe, you do look a bit too Jewish.
Well, she actually spoke like that. Her name was Anna McCorkadale.
Oh, dearly.
She was a sister to a lady in waiting. And she was on the phone to the casting directors, and she'd have to say, Pickles, get down!
All the time. The dog.
Because
It's terrible.
Pickles the dog.
Yeah, Pickles the
not,
dog.
not her assistant.
I don't think so. But anyway, so she said, why don't, maybe dye your hair blonde.
But you were saying in your diary, in your sort of Bridget Jones style diary that you were writing at the time, you were saying, I think I need to look into plastic surgery and get a nose
Yes,
job.
I wonder whether Grandma would lend me the money for a nose job. Yeah.
Maybe Grandma would lend me the money so I look less Jewish, and poor Grandma. And at one point, Grandma herself, Rosie, in her diary, when she's writing about Kristallnacht and she's writing about all the terrible things that happen and she hasn't heard from her parents for so long, and she just says, I'm sick of being Jewish.
Yeah.
And it's so, because it's this constant weight and this constant, where can I go that's safe, and this constant fear and why do I, and it's in that moment, and most of the time, of course, she is railing at the the Gestapo and the Nazis and the horror show that is being inflicted upon her people. But occasionally it's like, this is a burden.
Yeah,
I don't want this
absolutely.
burden, and I totally understand it. And it's a moment of going, this is such an imposition. And of course, it isn't. It's only an imposition because of the brutality of the power structures. But it does feel very heartbreaking to read that. To read both her saying that and you saying I should get a nose job. You know, that both heartbreaking diaries of 23-year-olds.
Yeah, It was amazing to see some of those parallels in amongst her writing so eloquently and me going, "Oh, that girl's such a cowbag." So yeah, it was a nice sort of
She
a
really
nice
was
moment.
such a cowbag,
She
by
was
the way.
awful, wasn't she?
Yeah, there's an
Yeah.
incredibly funny bit where your juxtaposition between your diary and your grand's diary, when she writes this really long, heartfelt piece about being forcibly repatriated to Poland, and you know, she's locked in a cell and she's desperately missing the children that she teaches at the orphanage because she's got this just gorgeous relationship with children. She loves singing to them and doing stories, and it's just so beautiful. And she writes this long, heartfelt piece about how she's determined to have to keep her hold of her dignity and her power, and she will not be cowed by this. And I'm not going to crumble, and this is the rest of my life, so it be it. I'm going to make something of it. And then you cut immediately to you saying, I feel sick. I hate myself. I've eaten three-quarters of a jar of Nutella. And
I'm too depressed to live.
None of my clothes fit. I'm too depressed to live. And then you just put these two together and you go, oh, we don't know we're born, do we?
Oh,
We do
no.
not know we're born. And it's just, but what's beautiful about the book, what's so charming about it is, of course, had your grandmother not had this hellscape, she would also have been saying, oh, you know, I'm infurious about this that happened at work today. Or, you know, she does, as we said, talk a lot about, there's a, if I can find it, there's just an amazing bit where she talks about this young man. While I'm looking for it, Max, can you talk a little bit about like the sort of, not that I won't listen, I'll listen while I look.
No, it's fine. Read amongst yourself.
You know, when you...
I'll just vamp for a bit, Debs. It's fine.
No, I folded down too many pages
That's all
now,
right.
and I don't know which folded down
I'll do a
page
bit of
it
soft
is.
Sue shuffle. I'll do Mr. Bojangles. I'll just keep things going.
I'd like a little Leona Lewis still.
Okay.
I'm jonesing for it. There are all sorts of power dynamics in the book. Things in your family, power dynamics in your family, power dynamics within your own struggle, political power dynamics, show business power dynamics, and as well as sort of, you know, broader political ones. Max, can you talk a little bit about the power dynamics that you discovered within Orthodoxy with the Beth Din and how that unfolded and made you feel?
Absolutely, and the Beth Din, for those that word has just been introduced to the group. It is the court of Jewish judges. They are judges. They are rabbis, and they work within Jewish communities. They oversee marriages, divorces, and various issues, including conversion. And unsurprisingly, the Orthodox Beth Din are some of the most serious rabbis on the face of the planet. Unsurprisingly, temperamentally, they were at best maybe bemused by the narrative sketch comedian / professional wrestler / Esquire magazine contributing editor who sashayed into their throne room. Yes, there's a large throne there. They don't always meet you in the throne room, but sometimes they do. And it does have a throne in it. And yeah, I would sit there with Eliana, you know, a solid foot of distance between us because you're not allowed to make any physical contact throughout the entirety of this process. And it's unbelievably daunting because the Orthodox conversion process goes on for question mark amount of time. There is no set amount. You meet them at kind of periodic moments, 5 to 6 month intervals. And that, you know, throughout this process, that your fate is very much in the palm of their hands. It is almost, there's a lot of reading you could do about it, but the headlines are, it's almost the nature of your soul. You know, are you to have a Jewish soul in their eyes or not? Are they going to permit you to go through this transformative experience. And strangely, ironically, my uncle, my sort of extremely from Orthodox uncle, actually he converted. He was my father's half brother. And my grandfather, who I never met, was like an RAF pilot in the war. And then after the war, he went off and I'm not quite sure on the timelines, but there was another family occurred in the north of England with a woman who wasn't Jewish. So whilst my father was halakhically Jewish, my uncle was not. So he'd gone through this whole process for reasons of his own many years ago, and his advice was, it's not like anything that you'll experience. You've lived your entire life with Western consumer rights, and that does not happen within this process. Within this process, you are a supplicant, and you apply, and you are, from the very second you write your first letter, you are de facto on their terms. They are the authority within this community.
And they can at any point say, no, we don't take this any further. But it's not like Snakes and Ladders where you go to the bottom of the board and you can try again. They could just say no forever.
They could. I mean, there may be a board, but they never let me see it. But they would always, I never got to read the notes they were writing, but they did keep a detailed file. But yes, I mean, in a sense there maybe is, because each of the meetings is very intense, and it's a bit like a kind of spoken exam, like a Viva or a Viva, however that is pronounced. And you might be asked to, read some Hebrew from a book, or you might be asked which is the blessing that one utters before or after a specific piece of food, or kind of anything. And there are worlds in which, that kind of, you pass with flying colours, and they go, okay, great, well, we see that your progress has been steady, and you go on. Or it could be, I'm afraid, down the ladder you go, down the snake. I forget, it's been a while since
I think it's up the ladder, down the snake.
Up the ladder, down the snake. Absolutely.
You've made that sound like an innuendo.
Did not. I've actually kept it very high. I haven't even mentioned the circumcision yet. So
No, that's absolutely true. But if they decide, well, actually, let's pivot to that then. In that case, if you
can we see it?
Can we see it? Okay.
Since you've mentioned the
right
snake,
fodder for a podcast. Let's go down the snake, guys. Come on. We won't need a ladder.
Tell us a little bit about how that came to be, because you were a Jewish child, but you weren't circumcised.
Yeah, which does happen. There are, especially in liberal communities around the world, there are people who choose not to do it, and it's still very much in the minority. It is a fundamental kind of core component of Judaism for many Jews, but there are communities who do alternate ceremonies that are sort of representative of the same kind of covenant. But my parents were freewheeling kind of bohemians, and I was their first kid, and they hadn't worked out to what extent Judaism would be at the forefront of our identities. And B, there was this slightly negative presence, this woman in the hospital who sort of handed me back in sort of disdain, and C, as it turned out, there was a rare other Jewish baby who'd been born down the corridor, had a bris, a circumcision, and there'd been some, I think what had happened, the baby was jaundiced, and you're not supposed to, strictly under Orthodox law, if there's any, if there is any health complications, you are obliged to wait, but for reasons unknown, they didn't. So anyway, this woman was like, oh, there you go, have him back. And then she was like, you're not going to want to do that horrible thing to him, are you? And my mum was like, well, not like here, not with you, not maniacs, and not now that you're judging me. So it was all just kind of, she really just, at the time, she was like, I just wanted to get out of, she hadn't really taken a strong view on it either way. She probably would have done, but anyway, it didn't happen for me.
The point is, you hadn't had it.
Correct.
And then, but to be halakhically Jewish and marry the love of your life, it became necessary later in life.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. When I was even within most progressive, Judaism, they're still real keen on it. So when I went to have my bar mitzvah, I technically converted via the Reform movement then, as did my brothers, as did my mum. And at that point, they were like, "This is great. We're like happy to welcome you in. Like, do you fancy getting the snip like now?" And my response was, "Can I not?" And eventually they were, well, I think they were like, we'd prefer it if you did. To which my response was, yeah, but crucially, can I not? And they were like, yeah, I guess so.
It's a technicality.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I was 13 years old. This was absolute, I couldn't think of anything more terrifying. It was an inopportune time in a growing boy's life. So anyway, and obviously at the time I was like, well, that's a bullet dodged and I'll never have to think about that again.
That bullet found you, my friend.
The bullet, it found me good.
You wrote that. You wrote it so brilliantly. It's so funny. And I mean...
That is a content one. There is a full chapter on the circumcision day, I'm afraid.
Well, it's called Making the Cart. And that is a sort of double meaning of making the cart with the Beth Din, but also obviously quite literally making that cart. And
just brilliant.
And honestly, I was really hoping at that point of the book that Eliana didn't change her mind. And didn't go, actually, should we... I don't know.
So it's not much of a spoiler alert because I'm talking about Eliana as my partner and I'm here wearing a wedding ring. So happily, despite the innumerable complications and disasters and near misses, one way or another, with a few strange things that happened, we made it to the end and we were married and we're happily married to this day. But on the day that I proposed to Eliana, I messaged my family in what was one of the least surprise messages of all time, saying I proposed to Eliana and she said yes. And my brother said Mazel Tov, but admit it would have been funny if she'd said no at this point. And I was like, as a professional comedian, I would have had to have handed to her. It's the funniest long game practical joke you could possibly play on someone.
I'd have loved it if she just said, can I think about it? And then I just left you hanging for a week going, are you fucking kidding me? Speaking of love and romance, I found a little piece here that I'd love to read. So this is Rosie's diary. I mean, should you read it because you do it so beautifully in the accent, or do you want me to?
Go for it. You do it.
She says on the 25th of October, 1938, this heartbreak is so painful. Samuel is in love with Jenna. She is a classroom assistant here and only 18 years old. It is impossible not to admire her. She is very beautiful. Her legs and hips are unbelievable. Again and again, I catch myself looking at her. For example, on Friday, in the bath, I waited to see her beautiful figure. It's a fantasy image. She has a perfect body. If Samuel saw that body, wow. She's excellent in her clothing, but so beautiful when she's naked. On top of that, her face is indescribable. How she must catch men's eyes. I cannot compete. I am an ancient 23-year-old cow. I must get Samuel out of my head. It will never be. And then, not long later, must be the next day. It's the next day. She says, I have really gained some self-respect. And then she says how she's talked to Samuel and decided to become friends with him. And now they've got great camaraderie. And then she says, it's all okay now. Thank God. I have just read in my diaries. He was speechless.
Absolutely unhinged behaviour. We love it.
That was the moment that I went, oh, there we go.
Yeah.
I am related to her.
And then Jess goes, Grandma, no, don't read your diaries to your crush, no.
I think when I read that book the other day on my own, sat there silently, I got to that bit and just audibly went, wow.
I mean, it's just so charming, but also the body comparison. I mean, it's never been any different, has it? Like, women are trained to be comparing our bodies and saying, well, she'll be more attractive and he'll like her more and he'll never like me. And it's, and there's just such similar stories where you like a boy at a nightclub, but then you take ecstasy and have to go home because you're, first of all, thrown out of the club because they think you're a dealer, and secondly... Secondly,
yeah, they thought I was what? No, I didn't call it a dealer, did I? I called it a drug pusher. And they thought I was a drug pusher.
And so she gets thrown out of the club, but also then she hasn't got her bag, so she has to talk her way back in to get a bouncer to help her get her bag, and then she ends up throwing up in the loo. And then you go home, and then you're just so annoyed that one of your friends, who you don't really think is a very good friend, you think has gone home with the boy that you like.
Yeah.
Which she did.
Of all the things we've been talking talking about. That's the biggest one. Oh,
Now
it's
we're
true,
on the
though.
real stuff.
Now we're talking about.
I think these young women in the front row are about the age that you were when you wrote this, and they're the same age as Rosie as well.
Right.
So,
oh, wow.
you know,
yeah.
they are going through this right now, and they've had a bigger response to that than when I talked about Kristallnacht.
I like
It's
that.
like,
and I'm here for that.
all very well being repatriated against your will in handcuffs to Poland, but fuck me if that girlfriend goes home with a boy you like.
Which she did go home with the boy as
did.
well, so you were right to, sharp intake of breath.
I fully respect that. It's scary, actually, how much we are, just even Grandma, after she had escaped and survived, hated her thighs, and you would think anyone that survived and escaped would just be too happy to be alive to worry about anything else. She was worried about her thighs. She was really judgmental about her weight, my mum's weight. My mum pulled my trousers down in front of her friend once and went, look at those thighs. She doesn't get those from me. Look, they go forward. They're my quads. I learned that afterwards. But that is so damaging. That it's just come down the line. And
I mean, imagine like escaping the Holocaust and then worrying about your weight. Like, it's incredible.
Isn't it?
But human beings have such a capacity to be anxious about small things, to be self-judgmental, and to avoid the big scary stuff.
God, yeah.
To think, what can I control? I can control my thighs. And actually, as a woman of thigh, I know you can't.
No.
You absolutely can't. You can't control your thighs.
Can't control.
It's not.
I'm getting less and less control over all of my body as I age.
Well,
I mean,
everyone
don't
does.
we all? Yeah.
It just does. But I think one reason we try and control our bodies is we think I can control that, or I should be able to control that.
100%.
And you know, again, evoking the close chosen family member of mine who says, he said to me once, he was getting really annoyed about he was getting a bank account, and then they were sort of making him fill out more red tape or saying you have to actually come back in because there's been an error on the system or something. And he said, I was just like, oh, fucking hell, like I've got to go back down there. And he just went, oh, I must be getting better because I'm annoyed about a small thing. I'm annoyed about admin. And he said, when you're in a refugee camp, the idea that you could get a bank account would be so fantastical. You would spend days waiting in a bank to be able to get a bank account and, you know, to have those rights that we think nothing of, you know, of being able to call up, say, can I have a doctor's appointment? We think, oh, I've got to wait 2 weeks, come on. Where you have no right to a doctor, you know, that which happens, you know, when your grandmother is in, says that there's someone calling for a doctor and says, I'm not well, and the Gestapo guard says, well, neither am I, and laughs and walks off.
Yeah.
You know, and
Absolutely.
and it's there's no right to a doctor, and we, you know, as you say, Western consumer, we are in an age of rights, and we get annoyed if a tiny inconvenience. You know, we can stand waiting for a tube and go 7 minutes far. Come on, you know, we are such a, and we don't wait for anything. You know, it's all, you know, one night stands and vegan tacos to the door now, and we are coming.
Sounds like a hell of a night.
But we are coming into.
Was that the delivery guy that you had the one night stand with, or?
Let's not dwell on that. We're not talking about my
Sorry.
diary. That's.
You must remember to tip if you have a one-night stand with a delivery guy. That's just modern manners.
Listen. That's unpublishable. HarperCollins said so. When I sent them my proposal, they were like, unfortunately, at this time,
It was an indecent proposal.
Yay. So puts a whole new spin on Uber Eats. But that's just absolute filth now at this point. Absolute filth. This is meant to be a literary event in a bookshop. Come on now. Come on. Waterstones have invited us here. They're expecting more. What was that? Oh, I see. Yes, what were we talking about?
Thighs.
Thighs, yes, absolutely. The small things that we can get upset about when we are in when we're in a sort of
privileged position,
in a privileged position, and how quickly it can wear off that we sort of start to, you know, want these things. But we are coming into an age now where we are losing rights all the time. We've lost a lot of rights in this country to protest in the last 10 years. We've lost all sorts of rights. What we're seeing in America now, when we see ICE come into the street and drag people away, you know, when reading from your grandmother's diaries, I thought, we're seeing this now, like very similar experiences that people are having and being taken off to internment camps. And I know they're not death camps, but it didn't start with death camps. So, you know, that's what we're seeing now. And both of these books, I think, you know, you have a beautiful chapter about Lion, your wife's
this is
grandmother.
Eliana's unbelievably fabulous grandmother, who was she went to a Swiss finishing school, then became a sort of a house model for couture houses, then pivoted to being a major collector of modern art over the 20th century and
an art dealer,
art pusher, and a art pusher, and general patron of opera and theatre, and exquisitely catty and judgmental gossip, and just
I think my grandma would have liked her.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. I met her at your wedding and had an incredible conversation with her, in which she said, because she was raised in Britain, and she said, she was telling me about the Second World War, and she said, she was a kid, and she said, oh, my mother was so paranoid. She'd keep moving us around. She was so neurotic. And I was like, well, it was probably reason in the Second World War for a Jewish person to be protected. She was like, no, we were fine. We were in Britain. Oh my God, she was absolutely paranoid. And it was sort of like as her teenage self talking.
Lion,
you know,
that was the actual Blitz. Like, it was,
I know. It's absolutely hilarious. Okay, thank you. So, you know, those family stories kind of unpacked have a real beauty, but sometimes also a real reminder of the past and what we have gained and what we can lose. And I think so they, as well as being very personal books, they're sort of, I suppose, gently political at a time where we need to be connected with our past and our future. These books, I think, both look to your past and to your future. Can you just briefly tell us how your grandmother ended up escaping and coming to the UK?
Yeah, so Grandma, she was taken to this internment camp in a border town of Poland called Sponshin, and she was with about 3,000 Jews there, Jewish refugees, and she took it upon herself, instead of sort of wallowing, to go and look after the children. And she started washing them and telling them stories and finding them clothes. And she was then asked to sort of join this makeshift school where she would look after the kids. And she made herself just so invaluable that when it was the time for the Kindertransport boats going from Poland, my grandma was asked to chaperone the children over and then return. So she was 23 years old. She had 70 children in her care. They came over. She saw Tower Bridge lifting up and the boat came through. And then she couldn't return because war broke out.
Did you?
Thank goodness, in a way, for her.
Wow.
I mean, not thank goodness, but for her, thank goodness, because she would have had to go back to Poland and that would have meant certain death for her.
So she was able to stay?
So she was able to stay, and...
Did she claim asylum?
The UK gave her a little card and it said, you are a friendly alien. Please don't shout in the streets or make noise after dark. Be polite and look after people's furniture or something really random like that. There's a little card in the...
I'm not originally British. I got that card as well.
Did you?
Yeah, I'm Australian.
Don't trash people's houses.
Yeah, no, I've disregarded that whole card.
Sure.
I lost it. I can't remember what was on it really.
You lost my sofa. What were you doing?
But she was sort of embraced by England, and a few years later, she managed to get into the Royal College of Music to do a course in classical piano, and she got a job pretty easily working in, she had references, but she worked in some different nurseries looking after children, and that's what she did all her life. She continued looking after kids until she retired.
I mean, it's really moving when she gets into the Royal College of Music, and again, it speaks to the refugee crisis at the moment, and the way that she was accepted, and then she gets into the Royal College of Music and she contribute so much to our society and the raising of our children. Although she loves all of the children, all of the German children, the Polish children. She's like, they're my children, and I love them so much. And then the entry about England, she says, oh, there's one sweet little girl, when she starts nannying, and she says, there's one sweet little girl and 2 demon boys.
Little devils, yes.
And then she says, I hate English children, or English children are awful, or something.
Yeah.
Badly brought up.
She says English children are awful compared to, it's just so funny. But she made a home here, made a life here, and had she not, we wouldn't have the wonderful Jess Robinson.
To worry about her thighs.
Well,
Not now, though. They're fine. They're strong. They went to
Absolutely.
the gym today and they lifted 60K.
There you go. I read recently that women with larger thighs tend to live longer.
Well, Grandma lived till 103.
There you go. If ever there was an advertisement for the woman of thigh, listen, a long life.
We will thunder through life.
Hey.
Is there anything either of you came to say that you didn't get to say, or you would like to tell the audience about your book?
Please, can you buy it?
Please, can you buy it? Great.
Hope you enjoy it. If you are on TikTok, by the way, which I have only just sort of really joined, I've been reading Grandma's diaries on TikTok. Well, the youth really like her. Apparently she's got lots more grandkids now. They love her.
That's
It's crazy.
so nice.
It's very touching and quite surprising at how many TikTokers, I don't know, drug pushers like Grandma.
Yes,
It's great.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I saw that she was at a reception with King Charles, who was then Prince Charles.
Yes.
And you say in the book, here is a picture of Prince Charles trying not to look intimidated by my grandma.
Yes. The main thing that she took away from that day was that he had sausage fingers.
Famously does.
So, yeah. Max, anything to say?
Please, if you fancy reading the book, that would be a wonderful thing. I would be thrilled to share it with you. It's not just the story of Eliana and I and the strange conversion. It's also a story of my father who was part of it. He was very ill, and that was kind of part of the quest. Was you've met Lion a little in this conversation, but Lion was in her 90s, and my dad was very ill. So part of the quest to get to the chuppah was they were part of it as well. So I just wanted to mention him.
Yes. Well, and you
And his slippers.
Yeah, absolutely. And you told us about his love for all things,
Of course, yes.
Jewish and wonderful. But it's true, yes, you're both against the clock in the book because Lion, as I said, I met her at your wedding and she said to me, I just wanted to make it to, because she was very elderly, but seemed, full of life.
She was razor sharp.
Yeah,
up
but
until-
she said, I just wanted to make it to Eliana's wedding.
Totally.
And so...
Well, she leant over, when I was at Eliana's sister's wedding the year before, she leant over to me and said, if I'm not at your wedding, I will be furious. I was like, Lion, I'm going as hard as I can, but I'll just try. Message received.
But she made it. She
Indeed.
absolutely
Yeah,
did.
They were both there with us on the day.
I recommend both these books, and I recommend you read them back to back because I think you'll get a lot out of it thematically. They also make they genuinely do make wonderful presents, especially for a racist uncle who doesn't like refugees. Truly recommend. And the nice thing is often when I come to a book signing, I buy like 3 or 4 for birthdays coming up, or I buy a little stack and I get them all signed, and then I add in a little, dear so-and-so, and I go, I got the author to sign the book for you. So they do make really beautiful presents. There will be a book signing there if anyone would like to buy a book and or get a book signed. That would be absolutely wonderful. We have some more shows coming up. We have, I think there's only 20 tickets left now for Zach Polanski at the Union Chapel, who is also Jewish, which is a 900-seater. I think it's going to feel very much like a sort of festival/rally. There's also musicians playing that night. It's going to be a real party. If you would like one of those tickets, I would get it now because I think they will all be gone tomorrow. We also have other shows coming up, which you can see on the website, guiltyfeminist.com, live shows. But we're doing this big Road to Gilead project at the moment, which is about the rise of the far right and how we can resist it. If you'd like to know about any of the shows that we're doing for that, the days that we're doing to get together to come up with grassroots projects. If you'd like to march with us at the Together Alliance, just go to guiltyfeminist.com, join the mailing list, and whenever anything is happening, we'll let you know. You'll also get told about other Waterstone's bookshop, book club events. There is a special Waterstone's Guilty Feminist book club mailing list. If you'd like to sign up for that, just tell somebody here tonight and we'll add you to the book club one. Have you enjoyed tonight? Well then, thank you so much, and please come again. I also wrote a book called 6 Conversations We're Scared to Have, which is partly about the rise of the far right and the fracturing of the left. If you would like me to sign a copy of that, I can also do that right over here. Other than that, there seems to be like drinks and snacks. Is that for everybody? So hang around, have a drink, chat about what you learnt, say hi to Jess and Max. Thank you so much. You've been a really lovely audience. We really appreciate. Oh, I didn't do Q&A with the audience. Shit. Oh, so sorry. I've totally forgot Q&A. I'm totally forgot.
Oh.
Sorry. Could you just say it again so I can say it for the podcast? Did you think about
ever lying and basically saying that he'd already had it done, or do you have to actually physically show them to let them know you've had it done?
Oh, do they have to see whether you've been circumcised?
A very good question. And the headline, which is not quite as salacious as it might sound, is yes. The final stage of any conversion process is entering a body of water called the mikveh. You are fully nude when you're immersed in the mikveh, and a conversion is ratified by that taking place in the presence of the Beth Din. Now, they are not staring at you. However, it would be quite the audacious move to bank on them not clocking, which would be it would be a high risk maneuver at the very end of a process. And at that point, I'm afraid you really have fallen down the ladder, and they're not going to let you climb back up the snake, because if you've been disingenuous about that particular element of it, I think the fury would be kind of unmatched. So strangely enough, that it would be pretty easy for them to tell. And in fact, even before you get to that point, had I been one of the many prospective converts who have already had a circumcision for whatever reason early on in their life, there is an equivalent ceremony which takes place called the Hatafat Dam Brit, which is a sort of ceremonial version of the Brit Milah, which basically involves a small pinprick on the tip of the affected area. So one way or another, somebody within the community would have had a glance.
Well, and you had to be witnessed as well, didn't you, when you actually had it done, and by an approved doctor, right?
Oh yes, the ceremony itself, the Brit itself took place, yes, by someone who was both
Orthodoxy.
a doctor, but also a moil, which is the name for the surgeon. So they wanted someone who was both. But yeah, no, I could, and believe me, every thought in the world about could you claim or could you, I mean, it was one of the biggest fears I had. It was that thing of like, it was a huge fear at the start, and then I was like, I'll grow up, like, there's far bigger challenges along the way, and there kind of were. And then once I got all those challenges done with, I was like, well, back to that fear, which is actually still here and totally terrifying. And I ended up writing one of the more unhinged emails I've ever sent to the doctor, to the moil. Yes, there were diagrams, and it was asking for a specific style of surgery, which, believe it or not, there are different styles. I've been on some subreddits in my time. I've seen some things I didn't want to see, but it was important that I did, because it gave me the fractional degree of agency that I could possibly have, which is like, I know that something's about to change for the rest of my life. Could it be a bit more like this than this? And he phoned me up 10 minutes later and said, oh, thank you so much for your call. Yes, yeah, no, that's fine. I can do it like that. And that was how I was able to commit to the process, and that's how I got married.
Thank you so much for that question. If you have any other questions, they'll be at the table. You've been a terrific audience. We've been do I need to open close the class? I'll do that later. We've been the Guilty Feminist. I've been Deborah Frances-White. Big round of applause for Max Olesker. Jess Robinson. Are you on tour at the moment?
I am on tour, yes.
Quickly say where you're on tour.
Please come and see Elton Reimagined. It's all of Elton's songs sung in the voices of my favourite icons like Britney Spears doing Benny and the Jets, Barbara Streisand doing I'm Still Standing. It's joyful. If you check out my website, jessrobinson.co.uk, you can see all of the tour dates.
You do not
and
want to
more.
miss that. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you to everyone at Waterstones. Go and have a drink. You have been listening to The Guilty Feminist with me, Deborah Frances-White, and my very special guests, Jess Robinson and Max Olesker. The Guilty Feminist theme tune was composed by Mark Hodge. The producers for The Spontaneity Shop were Ned Sedgwick and Tom Solinsky. The recording engineer was Grundy Lazimbra. Thanks to Gina DCO, Zainab Mohammed, and all of you for listening. For more information about this and other episodes, visit guiltyfeminist.com.